expenses. You can support us in many available options like archive subscriptions, our seed pack selections, or even my woodworking store. And we also even have Revolution Radio's swag at the Revolution Radio Zazzle store, once you can get t-shirts, coffee cups, even a baby onesie. Or you can just plain donate to the cause. We cannot continue without your support, and your support is what helps pay the bills. So please, if you wish us to continue, please stop by our station support page and drop a dime on us. Revolution Radio, where information is. Is your data safe? Do you have the necessary information to assist you in confidently living through just about any survival situation? Is survival and gardening, off-grid living, medical knowledge, or even natural or man-made EMPs on your list of personal concerns? Do you have your documents and your personal information in a safe place in your hands where you know where it is? Well, check out our preloaded EMP-proof thumb drive. Over 3 gigs of survival documents and how-tos, plus the USDA offline food preservation website, and much, much more, including a surprise bonus we just can't tell you about here. With plenty of room left over to store your most important documents. Imagine if a megavirus or a computer failure took out your bank, or all the banks for that matter. Are your banking records safe in your hands? So when they get things fixed and repaired, you can say, hey, look, this is what I had. You have it. I want it back. Is your personal data safe? Family records, addresses, phone numbers? We'll squeeze on over to freedomslips.com. Yes, that's W. Of everything that we offer. So, folks, keep your data safe for your peace of mind. Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here.
This is the people's war. It is our war. We are the fighters. Fight it then. Fight it with all that is in us. And may God defend the right.
Warning! Warning!
We've got to stop them! They're going to kill us all! See how the trouble you've started? Be they the government, be they industry, be they organized labor, be they anyone, or human beings. Time when the operation of the machine becomes so odious, makes you so sick at heart that you can't take part. You can't even passively take part. And you've got to put your bodies upon the gears and upon the wheels, upon the levers, upon all the apparatus, and you've got to make it stop. And you've got to indicate to the people who run it, to the people who own it, that unless you're free, the machine will be prevented from working at all.
Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, the #1 listener-supported talk radio station, throwing ourselves upon the gears of the machine. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
Call down the thunder, well now you got it. You tell them I'm coming, and hell's coming with me, you hear? Hell's coming with me!
Revolution Radio.
How healthy are your arteries? Deteriorating circulation has a number of early warning signs. High cholesterol, high blood pressure, fingers and or toes often go cold, arms and or legs often go to sleep, sharp diagonal crease in the earlobe, short walks cause cramping or pains in legs, memory is not as good as it used to be, ankles swell late in the day, chest pain after physical exercise or emotional stress. If you experience even one of these symptoms, your circulatory system is crying out for attention. Extendivite is a natural solution to help improve your overall health. Extendivite is not your average heart tonic. To order, call 1-877-928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com or find us on Amazon.
Extend your life with Extendivite.
The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Hello everyone, I'd like to welcome all of you back to Ohio Exopolitics. I'm your host, Mark Snyder. I've got Solon on the line. Solon, how are you today? Do you hear me?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I had my mic muted. I'm doing great.
That's okay, man. It's
good to hear you.
How's your area of the country doing? Have you been hit by the crazy weather?
Well, not really. We just went through some heat, but I know that we have a cold front coming in, so.
Yeah, they've had a lot of crazy stuff going on the West Coast. I think the Sierra Nevadas now have something like 500 inches of snow on the ground. It's over 40 feet. I don't know if you've seen any of those insane pictures.
Yeah, I've seen some of the floods over there.
Yeah,
I haven't seen the recent stuff, though.
It's pretty crazy. Hey, I have a plan for the show for this hour, but if you've got anything specific that you want to bring up, first of all, we can certainly cover that.
Not anything specific. I've just been doing a lot of research on plants lately, so I'm a little.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think I talked to you about permaculture at one point.
What kind of research are you doing?
Well, I looked into some of the. I'm trying to grow an orange farm here on my property.
No kidding.
Just this year, the zone is changed to zone 9, and so I've actually planted a lot of. I shouldn't say a lot. I planted 2 orange trees on my property, and they all survived because I would say the north got slammed real bad with crazy weather, but down here it really wasn't that bad. We didn't get anything really crazy.
Wow! So you think oranges will grow in North Carolina?
Well, a certain variety called kumquats will.
Kumquats.
And so those, yes, kumquats, and they're unique because you can eat the whole thing. You eat the skin and all.
Really?
And yeah, and so they're finding this to be a very healthy fruit. Actually, it's loaded with beta carotene because typically you find beta carotenes in orange things, and these fruits themselves are orange.
Can these trees survive freezing weather, like below 32?
So they're unique in the fact that they go dormant, which means that they can survive the winters.
Okay.
From my understanding, I've read that after 3 weeks of warm weather, they come out of dormancy. So, yeah, I've just been trying to do lots of research about that, and there's a lot of great things that were studied in the early 1900s, and it's been updated since.
Do you think they would survive in Ohio?
There is one, what is it, the trifoliate, citrus trifoliate. Well, I don't think they call it citrus, but it should be classified as such.
Mm-hmm.
But the trifoliate definitely can go up to zone 6. I don't know what zone you are.
Okay, I don't either.
You don't know?
No, I don't know anything about these zones at all. This is all new to me, yeah.
Well, it's measured based off of the coldest average you get for, I think, the past 5 years or 10 years. I could be wrong about that. I think it's 5 years. I'm not sure.
Huh. Wow. Do you grow these trees, or do you just go to a nursery and get them?
So I'm real crazy about trying to make my own variety. So I've been reading a lot of books about people who've done their own. And it's quite amazing that some of these people started this in the early 1900s. There's a guy named Luther Burbank that I'm kind of crazy about, and he actually created the pluot. which I'm not sure. You familiar with the pluot?
Never heard of that, no.
So he took the plum and the apricot, and he cross-pollinated them, and took the seeds from each fruit and planted them, and he came up with a new variety that had like the form of the plum, but also properties of the apricot.
Wow.
This is actually done because the plum flowers used to had a hard time taking the harsh winters, which they're actually in flower right now. Mine's actually in flower here. My yard looks kind of beautiful with all the flowers from the plums and the almonds.
You guys got flowers?
Yeah. Well, because of those two trees, I do. And then I also have, I'm real big about trying to bring the bee population. It's actually very sad that I've only seen 2 bees the entire winter. So, I mean, and we've had some days where it's like 76, almost 80 degrees. Like yesterday was like 78 here. And I only saw 1 bee, and that's kind of a scary situation, I think. But
wow.
That's only because I know that if they start to decline, we're going to have less fruit overall.
Less humans eventually.
Well,
when the bees go, we go, I think.
Well, I don't know. I know that you can't. There are other pollinators, but nothing as great as the bee. There's actually been studies showing that people who did it by hand versus the bees still outwon, and the fruits were actually larger as well.
So where do you get these trees at? Do you you start from a seed?
Now, okay, so the kumquats I actually went to a woman's house down about an hour away from me. I drove down there in my little Prius, and which is kind of funny because when you show up trying to buy trees, no one thinks you're going to be showing up in a Prius, But,
that's so funny. I got a Prius too.
Yeah, well, the Generation 2 seems to have a really nice sized cabin or back end.
Yeah.
And so I just put the seats down, and I loaded that thing up with trees, and I bought a couple kumquats from this lady who actually did all the grafting and all herself, and she had 2 varieties. She had the Miwa and she had the Nagami, and the one of them's more sour and one of them's a little bit more sweeter. So
you're actually buying a small tree.
Yes, but I already got fruit off both of them, and so I took the fruit and I've already started growing them from seeds. So I got seeds throughout my whole house of just all these citruses that I'm trying to grow.
And you're trying to grow them in pots and things like that?
Yep, I have a bunch of them in pots. I'm going to be putting them out in spring and see what happens. It's exciting.
I've got to go to you for advice on how to, usually I'll hire like a landscape guy to go get trees for me. And I think I should get a little more proactive and involved myself. It's probably a little cheaper too. I don't know, maybe.
Yeah, well, growing them is cheaper, for sure. And the problem is that when I do buy them, I try to buy more than one because they might not live. It happens.
Right.
So I've invested a lot of money in fruit trees in my property, but if I was to sit here and start listing them all out, you would think I have some type of supermarket in my yard.
No kidding. Well, I'm into trees. I got like 30 trees on my 2 acres here. I'd like more. It doesn't seem like enough to me.
Yeah. Oh, well, you should see my mind when I'm thinking about them. I'm like just constantly trying to fit more and more of them in. And, if you ever do pay attention to, in permaculture, they have this thing called a food forest, which if you ever do pay attention to a forest, it really can compact a lot of trees.
Oh, yeah. In a small area.
Yeah. I think I had a friend who was telling me on 2 acres, the Playarin can feed a family of 5. So
seriously?
So, oh, man, you'd be surprised what you could get to grow if you just studied your environment and what can grow there.
In case there's someone that just tuned in that thinks we only talk about trees on this show, you mentioned a key word there, the Playarin. Who are the Playarin?
I guess they're from a different space configuration, right? And then they come here from Era.
Right. They have a star system called the Playarin star system.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, and apparently they're part of a mission that stimulates far back with a man named Billy Meyer. Of course, he's part of the mission as well. And dude, I feel like that's such a huge topic. I probably shouldn't have brought it up, but
No. I think it's a perfect topic and a perfect thing to bring up. And you mentioned the mission.
Yes, that's still kind of something that I'm always nervous to talk about. It's like I feel like their mission is to I look at it as this teaching, but it's more than just that. It's to like get us back in balance. It's, if you ever read 251, what it says there, it seems like they came here, they did a lot of crazy things to the population here, and it's like they have to correct it. So I feel like there's so much to that word, but
so
yeah, how do you explain it? I don't think I've ever actually tried to explain it.
Well, okay. So what is the mission here? The Meyer information talks about the mission, and I think in the simplest way to put it, it's taking these writings, which are called the teaching of the Spirit, and actually preserving them in written form. I think that's what Billy's quote-unquote reason for being here during this incarnation. In his prior incarnations, like Enoch, Elijah, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Emmanuel, and Muhammad, he never wrote these things down. So now we've got these books with all this information in it. The only problem is most of the world really isn't ready for it yet. Would you?
Yeah. Well, I talk to a lot of people who are very intelligent, and some of these people are influenced with people around me, and some of the people around me are influenced by Billy, and they talk about this stuff. And I really see Billy as a person who is before his time.
Oh yeah.
Because a lot of his teachings, don't get me wrong, I study them a great deal, and I'm constantly waiting for science to just get to another point where I can bring it up in topics, because I feel like that's where people can relate to a lot of this science, because outside of that, it seems so almost religious, even though it's not at all.
Right.
But it's hard unless somebody sits down with this material to understand that it is more than just science. We haven't got there yet. That's how I pretty much see it.
What I find with myself personally is I go through this kind of cycle where I seem to get things rolling again, everything's going good, and then I kind of drift away from the material, and I don't focus on it so hard like I used to. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll run into some adversity, and I'll run into some difficulty in life, and then I'll realize, like, wow, I just went completely out of neutral positive thinking. And I'm like, wow, I need to get back on I need to really get focused again. And what I've been studying, like today, and I should have been, and a little bit this week, but I should have studied more this week, is this idea that the feelings determine the state of the psyche, either negative or positive.
Mm-hmm.
So probably the first thing I should probably define, and I know you know what I'm talking about, but there might be some people listening that don't, is what is the psyche? The Meyer teaching tells us we have a spiritual consciousness, which is related to our spirit form, what's called our spirit form, which is the part of us that never dies. It's our consciousness that's always alive. Well, we have a material consciousness, which is really kind of who we are in this lifetime. And what controls the thoughts and the feelings of the material consciousness is this thing called the psyche. And it just became something I focused in on this week, that the feelings set the state of the psyche. And I'm always, I don't know what you're like, but when I'm doing my like introspection, I usually sense my feelings going off before I sense my thoughts. Does that happen to you? How are you?
Well, the way I understand it is your thoughts create the feeling unless they come from the gamut.
Ah, now you're bringing it back. Okay, and the gamut controls the thoughts and the feelings of the spiritual consciousness, right? That's part of your spirit form.
Yes, they come directly from the infindon.
Well, explain that. That's a really good word. That's a great, I love that word, infindon.
So, now I'm going to have to explain it the way I know it. So,
okay.
The material side has its own functioning and way of going about things, and there's also a counterpart to the Feinstofflichkeit, or what we could call the spiritual side. In the way it's taught by Billy is that the Feinstofflichkeit is the fine matter world, and in this you have everything's mirrored, and in there you where the psyche would be where the gamut is, but the gamut is also directly related to the psyche. So the psyche almost kind of lives in both. You can almost see it as both.
Yeah. Now you mentioned the fine matter world, and you used a German term there I'm not real familiar with. Could you repeat that again?
It's called fine. Well, it's Feinstofflichkeit, and to be honest with you, I don't know the translation. I think we call it the fine. The fine spiritual perception or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember the English word because I only know the German is so embedded in me. So
the writings talk about this fine spiritual perception, and my memory, and correct me if I'm wrong, is this has, like, you develop this sensitivity through observation.
Yes.
Particularly when you're in, like, I would say in nature, it's a lot easier to sense this. And because creation, we lost Stephen. Creation radiates. It radiates love. Okay. Welcome back, Stephen. We noticed you there.
Hello, Stephen.
He was, I don't know, he's muted now. He might be having some trouble. But this whole idea of this fine spiritual perception is, to me, very, very interesting, because I think I've sensed that before.
We've all have.
Yeah. That's interesting. Stephen says he can't hear me. Well, let's hope that. I think we're recording well. That's very odd. Huh. You can hear me, Solon, so I don't know.
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Okay, I think we're good. I'm going to assume we're good. Go ahead. I kind of interrupted your train of thought there. You were talking about the gamut, and
so I just want to. I don't know if I want to correct you because I don't know what you read from, but I just know that the psyches are affected by two things. One of them comes from your thoughts. So your thoughts tell you, based off the feelings, whether they're good or bad. And everybody can test this for themselves and has tested this for themselves, but they just need to be aware of the feelings. And then the other one comes from the gamut side, which is the spiritual side. And that's the one I was telling you about. If you ever been to like a foreign, I wouldn't say just a foreign place, but you go down like a bad neighborhood or or you just get a bad feeling about somebody, and it didn't originate from your thoughts. It just came to you. And that could be the mood side, the spiritual side that just came right to your feelings. So bypasses the
this is what I was talking about. I'll read this here. It says the feelings are formed correspondingly, each according to the kind of the thoughts. And the feelings then determine the state of the psyche, positive or negative. My dog just ran down the stairs, so if you heard any weird noises, that's what that's all about.
Yeah, and all right, so I just want to say that before I ever got into Meyer, I was really interested in what was depression and what caused depression.
Oh, yeah.
And one of the ways I learned is that we actually caused it, and I didn't realize until I got into Meyer material that it was our thoughts.
Yeah.
So, we are actually causing all these bad feelings on ourselves that really restrict us and make us shake and get tight. But this can also be taken on from the environment as well. Like if you're in a war situation, you're going to be having a devastated psyche.
Oh, yeah. I for some reason, I have this fascination with World War II. And lately I've been watching these documentaries on the island hopping we were doing when we went to like Saipan and Iwo Jima and Okinawa particularly, because it was the last step to Japan, and we had like a army of 450,000 people, and we actually had like 800 ships. I mean, it was unbelievable how much stuff we had over there. And, I was thinking, imagine you're this kid from Ohio or North Carolina or Nebraska, wherever, and they take you from your little hometown there, and they take you, maybe you're going to be a Marine, they take you down to I don't know, I forget that. What is it, North Carolina, where the Marines are? Don't they have a camp down there? Just off the coast.
I'm going to be honest. I don't know much about military things. Sorry.
Okay, that's okay. But I think there is actually. There's an island off of either North or South Carolina.
There might be one in Charleston.
I can't remember, but let's say, okay, so you train and then they ship you out to San Diego. They fly you 2,000 miles. And then they put you on a boat for another 3,000 or 4,000 miles. And they take you to Okinawa. And you're part of the invasion force, and you're in the middle of this amphibious vehicle with all these other soldiers, and they pull you up on the shore, and they drop the front of the vehicle, and all these bullets fly in, and boom, one hits you right in the chest, and you fall over and you're dead. So I was thinking, well, is that really a wise thing to do? Or is that just kind of, because we have this whole sense of patriotism and all these ideas, but really, did you kind of was that life in a sense kind of, I hate to use the word wasted, but we think there's a lot of propaganda that we get in society, and I just wonder, I know the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, but I know that, like, Roosevelt knew they were going to attack. And that's why they moved.
I actually did a paper on that.
Oh, did you?
Yeah. I had an English teacher who was into conspiracies and whatnot, and I had asked them if I could do a paper on the World War II, and they were aware that Japan was going to bomb them, and it stimulated because we had cut their access off to oil.
Oil, yeah. And
I thought that was interesting.
So I wonder, granted they did attack Pearl Harbor, but were the Japanese willing to try to come all the way over here and attack our mainland? I mean, was it truly an act of self-defense on our part?
Well, I feel like what we did was just wrong.
Okay.
We're aware of that now.
I'm just throwing out this for conversation. Because it just, can you imagine? I can't imagine the people today doing that. I can't imagine us putting together, and it's really that big. It was really even more than 800 ships, I believe. And hundreds of thousands of people to go over there and attack. Do you think we would do something like that today on that scale?
I think what makes us different today than then is that today we can go to, like for instance, my generation can easily go to something like YouTube and look at a whole nother culture and the way they are and act and their food and people, taking video clips of like walking the street.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't get the sense that any of these people are bad or terrible. So yeah, I think we would have a hard time doing this today.
I do too. And I wonder if, it just seems like, I'm no expert on this, but it seems like a lot of it could have been avoided.
Oh yeah.
Think about all the. I don't know if you've ever studied the way we went to like Saipan and Leyte Gulf and the Philippines and the Marianas and like I said, Okinawa and Iwo Jima, and we just so many of our guys died, and then we would wipe out 10,000 Japanese here, and not only that, these beautiful tropical islands we would drop hundreds of bombs on, and we'd have 20 or 30 ships surrounding it, just blasting those big guns. And by the time they did their landing, what was a beautiful tropical island was just a total mess. It's just the whole thing. And then our guys get there, they're 17, 18, 19, 20 years old, and they step off of this landing craft, boom, they get shot, they're dead. That's it, their life's over. It's such insanity.
Man, that turns my stomach thinking about it, man. I couldn't, I kind of skipped the whole war thing when I was in school, not on purpose or anything. It just, I was moving a lot and whatnot, and I really never got to learn a lot about all of them.
Oh, okay.
But I mean, I have kind of studied them, but I never found much interest in it. I had a hard time as a young person when I was coming out of college, the idea of why we needed war. I mean, I literally needed people to tell me why, and no one really could.
Right.
I just never saw it as a good thing. I mean, there was never a winner or a loser. Everybody lost.
Right. Well, we kind of went off on a tangent here a little bit, but the point of it is, I think we've got to learn to control our thinking. I mean,
So true.
If we can't control our thinking, our thoughts, we have these tangled ideas, and they confuse our thoughts, and that causes our thoughts to go to extremes in our thoughts, and they misdirect, and then it triggers emotions, and then pretty soon we're in murder or manslaughter, but the whole mindset of hundreds of thousands of people being eager to go to war is really different. We're not like that now, I don't think.
Well, let me give you an example, and probably the most extreme example that's happening right now. And God, this is going to sound really bad, but I got to use it because I think maybe people will understand a little bit better. But right now, this whole Trump situation and them trying to say that he's involved with Russia.
Oh yeah.
And there's been years of, at least 2 years of investigation, and they can't find anything yet. You still have all these people who believe it, and they're crazed about it. That he's in bed, quote unquote, with Russia.
I know, it's so absurd.
And if you kind of look at that and you go back in time and you say, the Japanese bombed us, we got to retaliate.
Yeah.
We got to defend ourselves. I don't think it's any different.
You're right. I never thought of it that way. Gosh.
So, yeah, I mean, they're to me it's propaganda, but and I don't know if he does or he doesn't. Maybe he does. But the thing is that there's way worse problems than trying to create Russia as an ally. It's better that we see them as an ally instead of an enemy.
Yeah, I see them personally as an ally. I don't see the Russians as a major threat right now.
I'm just going to hold my tongue, actually.
You're going to do what?
I feel like, as an American, I have the biggest problem with the way our government is going about things.
Yeah.
So, and
Well, it'll be interesting. You remember Billy saying by 2020 that our government would start to come apart? That's next year.
Yeah.
It's hard to believe.
After. Yeah, I think it was Patah, actually.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, Patah said that to Billy. But have you read the Billy's visions?
His recent ones?
Yes, he gives like calculations.
Do you have those handy?
No, well, I've studied them enough to know the gist of some of them, because
okay,
as I'm reading some of them now, you're seeing it. It's clear.
Wow.
But one of the biggest is that they were going to declare martial law because of so much chaos going on. And I think some of it will happen because people will want to stop wars. I feel like we had this situation with the Cold War.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if this was to re-emerge itself, I think you would see these protests all over again.
So are you saying that Billy's visions see us going into kind of a martial law situation?
Yeah. I mean, if you look at the people and the government, they're two different sides. The government really doesn't represent the people anymore. I think people are aware of this.
Well, even the government's split in two, right? The people on the left and the people on the right.
So when we're tearing each other apart like this, we're ultimately this is our doom. We need to unite as a country, but it's further and further splitting. You have one side, like I think we discussed this last time, where we're just not talking to one another anymore.
What, the indifference?
Yeah, no, I mean, exactly.
Yeah. Let me read just something that I put on my website, and I posted it on Facebook. And the plans of the New World Order. This is just my synthesis of what I see and what I've learned. It says, make humanity genderless. The authorities in this world want to transform the lower class into a group of androgynous human beings. The elite want to create two main groups in society. The first group is the elite or upper class, which is composed of about 1% of the population. The second group is the main body of the population, which will be another 99% of the people, which ultimately will have no gender, no rights, and almost no ability for independent thinking. The lower class will have no sex. I think the move to recognize transgender people is the slow psychological preparation, which will move the lower class into being androgynous. The elite are slowly brainwashing the public, which is why we are hearing all of this information about multiple gender pronouns. We're hearing how young boys are given female hormones and young girls are given male hormones, and transgender boys are allowed to compete against girls in athletic events. The pushing of gay rights, I think, is scripted and is planned events. Women's liberation is an intentional attack on marriage. I believe the removal of sex is the first movement towards several other stages that this secret dark order has planned. They want to remove the family. They want to end childbirth. Normal childbirth will be ended. There will be only artificial insemination, test tube, cloning. Normal procreation will be outlawed. The family will be outlawed. Children will not be allowed to experience the normal bonding that takes place between child and parents. And I think this group also wants to remove something. They want to remove the brightest of the people in the world, like the Asian race, the Jewish race, the Caucasian race. And I think the problem of mass immigration into Europe and North America is designed to really destroy the Caucasian race. So what they'll have is kind of a blending of all. Now, I know some of this is very politically incorrect, but this is just my personal observations. I just wanted to throw out there.
Where did you read that?
I just wrote this. This came to me 2 days ago. So I just... Huh?
Interesting.
That's
I see this as a lot of different things, and and that kind of are taking place. When I was in college, I became aware of all these little small wars that we have in this country: the race war, the gender war, the class war.
Yeah.
And none of it seemed to get any better. I would get around rich people and be scared because of their way of life kind of created indifference. And I would get around poor people and I would feel like family.
Really?
And yeah, so I naturally kind of have like a little bit of fear for rich people, and I think that's kind of like what we have now today with the elites.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of strange that I had kind of sensed all that when I was younger. And today I am very crazy about the idea of women coming to power. I feel like I love telling people when we were younger, we used to say the yo mama jokes, but because they would hurt, But when you said yo daddy jokes, it was like kind of a joke. Like no one really took it as hard as you did with the mom.
Huh.
So I think it's clear to me that the mother definitely has a huge impact on each person.
Exactly.
And I feel it's the one thing we're missing as a whole world is this motherly touch.
Mm-hmm.
So, I see these unbalanced things.
Well, it's very interesting that you mentioned balance, because the Meyer information talks about the negative and the positive, right?
Yeah, and together they make a whole.
Yeah, and the male, the female.
Yeah, but without the good, you can't have the bad. I studied Buddha, and Buddha said anything that brings you joy will one day bring you sorrow.
Wow. And
just the more I thought about that, I was like, man, he's right. I've started to lose some of my family members, and I've had such great times with them. And yeah, when you lose them, it hurts. And it's with almost anything you can think of.
It's very interesting because you look at love a different way, and you start to learn to be a little more neutral, positive in your love. At least that's what's happened with me over the years.
Yeah.
Because the first time you lose a dog is, I was ready for, I was clinically depressed. But then you start to learn, you experience, like you said, death in the family, and you start to cope with it more, and then you learn how to handle things in the best possible way. And that's why the Meyer information is so helpful. You learn to be neutral, even about the things you love. Boy, is that ever helpful. You don't have the mind with the feelings, like we were talking about the feelings, kind of going to extremes.
The emotions.
The emotions. Now, there's a difference, right, between emotions. Emotions are they're reactive, they're reflexive, they're almost impossible to control. You really can't steer them. But the feelings, they grow from the thoughts, and they can be steered, right?
I would say emotions are more like out of control feelings. They both are created the same way.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't know if the gamut plays a role with emotions, but
probably does.
Definitely your thinking.
Right.
Were you correcting me there? I didn't hear you.
No. I was just saying you're right. The emotion probably doesn't come from the gamut.
Yeah.
I don't see creation as being emotional at all.
I've never given this thought, so I can't really say anything. I'd have to definitely think more about that. But
well, and it's interesting. Why don't you take a shot at describing what the creation is? I mean, I know that's a tough one too. I put you on the spot here.
Yeah, actually, so I'm part of a kind of North Carolina group, and one of the members said that I guess I probably had a problem with at that point, but because I had never really thought about it like this person did. And she says everything around you is creation, from the air you breathe to the feelings that run through you. It's all part of this Schöpfung, this creation.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can't go one moment without experiencing it. Even when you're asleep, you're still in it. It is you. You are it, and it is you. It's so profound that we don't have words for it.
That's interesting, because I do think, like it says, our spirit form is a fragment of the universal consciousness. So I guess I'm really focused in a little bit more on the universal consciousness. Like, okay, these are more rhetorical questions, I guess, because our material consciousness, in a sense, is a part of creation, but not in the same sense as our spiritual consciousness, right?
So the way I understand it is the spirit itself enlivens the body.
Right.
And then it makes up of two sectors. When you're in the material realm, that is,
mm-hmm.
you have the material, and then you have the counterpart, which is the spiritual.
Mm-hmm.
For the fine Stofflichkeit. I'd much rather use that than spiritual, because it's like, to me, it has more meaning to it, only because I've just done so much reading of it.
I would love to see that word.
Fine Stofflichkeit?
It's probably in the Psyche, the book, The Psyche, right?
Yeah. I'm probably the worst when it comes to the English books, because I just don't read them enough. I'm trying to, so I can talk with people in English instead of saying, English and German when I speak. But it's so hard. It's inside of me.
Are you able to read the German?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I read the German all the time.
Oh, wow. That's great.
Of course, I was having a conversation with a German right before I got on this show.
Really?
Yeah. I was talking. Somebody donated something, and I couldn't understand what took place, and I just asked them a message.
Oh, okay.
And then I said some English words to them, and they didn't understand. So I'm thinking they're of an older generation.
Oh, okay.
Which works great for me.
Well, that's really good. I mean, I can, if I read a German sentence, like I was doing this today, and, a few words popped out. And, well, one of the things I was looking at, and this would be an interesting, since we've only got 15 minutes left in the first hour, is, how it says in the Way to Live book, it says, fulfill your duty to yourself. And what really stuck with me is the whole fulfilling. What does fulfilling mean? It means to bring to completion, to achieve, to realize something. And one of the German words for fulfill is erfüllen.
Yeah, erfüllen.
I don't know if I pronounced that very well.
Yeah, erfüllen. I thought you did.
Yeah. So I thought it was real important, because fulfilling, is implies kind of a completion, a fullness almost.
Yeah. So when the air is put into a word, it has its own meaning, and it would just be if it was just who.
Say that again. I didn't.
The air, the ER.
ER. Okay. Erfüllen.
Yeah. It has two rules to it. It can either be creating a verb from a noun that conveys the conclusion or an end of an achievement or action.
Uh-huh.
Or it can be a verb that's created from an adjective, which conveys the idea of becoming something or giving something a quality.
That is very interesting.
Yeah, I actually have these rules all over. I have chalk paint in my room, and I write all this stuff down so I can recall them if I need them.
I'm really glad we're having this discussion, because this is one of the things I want to kind of do with the show, is kind of move into some of these more subtle areas. So
I think it's very important.
So when you read this in the German, erfüllen, how would you pronounce that?
Erfüllen? I need to kind of say it, but that's how I guess you'd say
okay.
it.
You're getting a a different, even a little bit different connotation than someone who reads it like fulfill.
Yeah. So I feel like you're actually leaving off the fact that you're actually trying to achieve this fulfillment. But I think it was in the text, the way you read it, so it might be there in the English. But yeah, so just little subtle things like that.
And we're trying to fulfill our duty to ourselves, like no self-chastisement, no self-abuse, no feelings of inferiority. I think we're all programmed with some feelings of inferiority. I don't know where they come from, maybe our childhood, our subconscious.
Well, you know, we give titles to one another, and we hold, other people up, and you're talked about how great they are, and yet you look at these people, and they're no different than you and I. The only difference is they've just done massive amounts of research and thoughts on a topic, and they really put a lot of effort into trying to achieve these things that they thought.
Mm-hmm. And it's very important to not chastise ourselves, to not abuse ourselves. All of this is ways to fulfill our duty to ourselves. We have to literally be our best friend, don't we?
Yeah. No, I think if we all just stopped for a second and we just smiled and just felt how beautiful it was to just be alive. I mean, you don't think about what's going on far away from us, but what's close at hand. It's amazing, that we have this planet that has the ability to give us oxygen that we breathe, and just enough light so we can stay cool and warm, and just enough beauty that go outside and appreciate it.
I like that. Let me read this. This is very, very interesting. It says, constantly guard yourself against neglecting or even disregarding or disowning your best and truest and closest friend, thus namely yourself, with whom you are closest always and for all times. That's a great line. I love that.
Yeah, I like that too.
I don't get in this book enough, but I'm going to try to take more time for it. Now, the other thing here, the German word for duties it begins with a F-P-H kind of P-F, Pflichten.
Is that? I think it's
Pflichten.
Yeah, I'd have to see it. I'm not sure.
Okay.
It's automatic when I read it, but to speak it is I'm still immature in that, in terms of, I feel like a little kid, I've actually gotten around people and we'd start speaking and I would get massive headaches. So I know that I have not put enough mental work into speaking it enough yet. So
I think it's trickier speaking.
It really is.
Now, there is an evolution code in Billy's German spiritual teaching texts, isn't there?
Of course, yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that, how that works.
So, like, for instance, when I said Feinstofflichkeit, that word is changed and mixed and used in so many ways. But to an English person, it has to be put in 3 to 4 words. And,
sure.
And then to tack on more concepts, they don't give the same thing as just that one word.
Right.
And I would say also in some of the German words, they give meanings. There's pictures to these things. I think that's another thing that we don't have in the English language. For instance, the one I like to use is the word under. We have under, then we have sub, and we have all these different, ways of saying under, when in reality, we don't have a clear definition of just the one word. And so we've lost that.
That's very interesting. And so when this spiritual teaching code, when it releases impulses from the storage banks, correct?
Yes, sir.
And these universal storage banks, these impulses, they begin to work on us in a way where it's subconscious or something like that?
I think it's unconscious.
Unconscious.
Yeah, unconscious, yeah. Could be wrong now. The subconscious plays a massive role in the human being.
And these impulses, they're literally coming from creation, and they're coming into us, correctly? They slowly penetrate into our consciousness?
Yes.
Wow.
That's correct. Well, and I think it's pretty logical to understand it. Like, just that word Feinstofflichkeit, it's used in so many different ways. And when you see it used and morphed in all these ways, it gives you these ideas that stimulate from yourself. But, I don't know how the storage bank comes into play, but it's definitely going into yours. And we know these teachings aren't going away.
Very interesting. The people that have done these translations, like Vivian Legge and Dyson Devine, these translations in English, I think they're very heroic people. That had to be difficult.
Yeah, this might sound bad. Like, I think those people do a great job. But one of the criticisms, so I just got the new book, the Erhat Author that just came out.
Is it in German or English?
The translation just came out from Figu Canada. You can get it from theyfly.com.
Really?
Website.
Wow,
yeah, you can
fantastic.
buy it from Michael Horn.
Thank you.
So I just got mine.
That's
You're
awesome.
super welcome.
Man.
And in there, it talks about the S being removed. And I have learned 2 different ways, even 3 different ways of translating that I think they could have done a little bit better of showing that the S was removed. And then in English, they didn't put it at all. So I thought that was kind of weird.
Well, explain. I don't know what you mean by the S being removed.
We do this in English. Whenever we give something a possession, like, for instance, Mark's show, you notice how I added that S, Mark's?
Yeah.
And that is possessive. It's apostrophe S. Well, German does the same way, but they drop the apostrophe and they just add the S.
Okay.
And in English, we call that the possessive state, or we call it possessive. And then in German, they call it the genitive. And they use it way more than we have. However, it's being kind of done away because of the dative. So I hope it doesn't fade away from existence. Of course, it will not if we have it written down in these teachings, but I shouldn't have added that. But
so how does this relate to Erhat Author?
So apparently, and I noticed it when they were talking about consciousness things or the spiritual stuff, they dropped the S and just turned it into one whole term. And in German, whenever you start to build words, you'll typically add the S. Like Lebensform, it's form of life.
Oh.
But they'll just drop. Now, I say that because that was one that they did. And I was like, so I started to notice there was a pattern when they were using it with the consciousness and the spiritual stuff. They just put it all as one big word.
Is that a little bit like Lebenskraft?
Yes, there you go. The craft of life, the power of life.
That's like the life force or something like that?
I think, or yeah, maybe they use force. Craft is force or power. Yeah.
So that's another way of, you're adding 2 words together, right?
You're adding 2 nouns together, yes. In this genitive case.
And do they put an S between them?
Yes. Yes.
I think we're on break now. I just heard a little sound, so we'll be back a little bit, folks.
You're listening to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. We'll be right back after this message.
Travels to Earth through the rainbow crystal bubbles from the furthest reaches of space and time, across the dimensions, through the elements, and in harmony with the colors of the universe. Through her mastery of abstract stream of consciousness malapropisms, she weaves a web of comic, satiric, cosmic conversation. Her subjects can range from Norman, the goose next door, to astrology and earth changes, and into the deep recesses of the soul matrix. She holds a wealth of knowledge on herbs, plants, and astrology. Join Mona and her guests on adventures of a feral hippie as she touches the earthly radio waves 5 days a week at 2 p.m. Monday to Friday on Studio B at Revolution Radio.
All right, we'll be back. We'll be back a little bit. Folks.
All right. 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 All
Transcending time and space, let us take you to the place inside your mind where thoughts divide and mysteries unwind. Join us every Monday evening right here on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time. And you will catch the Fenton Perspective with our great host, Lorian Fenton. Come listen in as she shares her amazing stories from the past to present, along with all of her guest secrets to the future. That's the Fenton Perspective every Monday evening right here from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time, only on Revolution Radio. Oh, and you don't need to expect us. We're already here.
Who are we? Where do we come from? Are you curious about the origins of the human race? Join me, Gavin McCall, and a variety of guests on Ancient Humans, where we decipher world events, explore scientific theories, personal stories, myths, mysteries, and lore about the history of the human race.
Hi everybody, it's me, the Fetch, host of Inside the Eye Live. Before the Sunday mainstream media political pundit talk shows, there's Inside the Eye Live, where we break down some of the weekly mainstream media talking points before the talking points even get aired. Add in some entertaining stories, weather, cats, intriguing and informative guests, and you get one of the most listened to Saturday morning streaming media political talk shows going today. And it's all right here on our flagship station, Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. So join me, the Fetch, for Inside the Eye Live every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock a.m. Eastern. It is truly intelligent media for the politically aware.
Hey, Frosty. Hey, Frosty. Stand by. Stand by.
How healthy are your arteries? Deteriorating circulation has a number of early warning signs. High cholesterol, high blood pressure, fingers and or toes often go cold, arms and or legs often go to sleep, sharp diagonal crease in the earlobe, short walks cause cramping or pains in legs, memory is not as good as it used to be, ankles swell late in the day, chest pain after physical exercise or emotional stress. If you experience even one of these symptoms, your circulatory system is crying out for attention. Extendivite is a natural solution to help improve your overall health. Extendivite is not your average heart tonic. To order, call 1-877-928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com or find us on Amazon.
Extend your life with Extendivite.
The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. Oh boy, we've got an echo. Got an echo here. All right, folks, stand by. I think I'm going to have to close this out. I'll be right back. Okay. Hello. Can you guys hear me?
Everything is clear now.
Okay. Yeah, there was something going on there. It's very, very strange. Stephen, you can join the program if you want. I just got a message from Stephen. Anyway, we always have a little fun here right at the change of the hour here. Frosty, how are you doing today, man?
I'm doing well. Spring is starting to jump up and show itself here in Colorado, although on Monday we had 20 inches of snow,
and it was quite a blizzard that paralyzed the city for a day.
Wow.
But at the same time, we've recovered from that, and the blue skies are out, and it's up to 40 degrees today, or 45. And so, life just moves right along. We just take these winters, they come and they go, and we just incorporate them and get down the road. So it's all great.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit, because some of the research that I've done, I've managed to find some PDFs written by professors from various universities. And the one thing I was able to pull out of this reading is that the forests play a role in moderating the weather. Like, for example,
Correct.
In the summer, they provide shade, so that keeps a cooler air temperature. And in the winter, I think all those trees keep some of that light from reflecting back, so it kind of holds a little of the heat in. So I'm wondering if the destroyed forests and the extra carbon dioxide in the air, I think, also makes a difference in some of this extreme weather, right?
Well, there's no question that there's a concept out there called the Gaia concept, that the planet itself is some kind of a living creature, that when it gets too cold, then it grows more greenery, so that it absorbs more heat, then it warms and then balances out. And right now, the Earth, according to the Gaia concept, is fighting for its life because of the carbon exhaust that literally is devastating the biosphere right now, certainly being absorbed by the oceans. And the oceans were never meant to absorb, again, the 100 million barrels of oil that are burned every day, along with all the coal and all of the wood and all that goes with that. So yeah, you're seeing this planet doing the best it can. At some point, obviously, there is a tipping point where the planet will not be able to balance out the exhaust of the human race, and that's where you're going to have more and more consequences, like tornadoes in the middle of Michigan in January, and certainly huge tornadoes coming up at the Gulf Coast, but also, and we don't even see so many of these these typhoons, if you will, in the oceans that are out there in the middle of the Pacific. We only notice them when they're here, and we only notice the tornadoes when they touch down in the USA and any other country that's seeing these imbalances. Oh, I want to really compliment you, Mark, because I've been getting quite a few emails, and for those of you who want me to ask any questions or answer any questions, my private email is frostyw@juno.com, frostyw@juno.com, or my website's howtolivealifeofadventure.com, and you can ask me to ask questions, because Mark and I are really covering questions and answers and topics that you're not going to hear on the mainstream news, and they just flat won't talk about it. In fact, the matter today, I was coming back from working out, and on the NPR, they were talking. There was two reporters over in Jamaica and over in the Middle East, and they were talking about how certain sands are being stolen off of beaches by millions of metric tons and put into giant container ships and shipped over to Qatar and all of the Saudi Arabia places where they're building all of these. Yeah, they're building all these buildings with the specific kinds of sands, and it's against the law, but they're breaking the law because the money's so great. And of course, the one thing that I just wrote into NPR and was on Fresh Air, I think, or one of their programs that featured this, and was the fact that they didn't tie it into the fact that Singapore is growing like out of its britches, can't afford or can't find enough construction material, so it's stealing all this sand, and it's an overpopulation issue. I mean, because Singapore's trying to add more land to its land because it's a small place, and so you never see the mainstream media connecting the fact that human overpopulation is the core cause of such things as this one particular topic today that I had to listen to. Of course, I wrote a letter in, and I said, I encourage you to go to the core issue here and what's causing all of this, sand grabbing, if you will, or sand stealing. And I said, I've got 50 top speakers and experts across the United States and Canada that right now will come on your show and give you some really core understanding of human overpopulation and its accelerating consequences worldwide.
Well, it's really interesting that you mentioned that, because I've always wondered how in the world they're building those buildings in Dubai that are on this sand. They must be going and getting it somewhere else, right?
That's what they're doing, yeah, because you have to have, they have specific sands that are, and sand, and the lady said sand takes forever to create sand because it's a breakdown of all the rock, around the world, because the planet's always bashing rock and tearing down the land, and just like, like you all know that I circled, I cycled around the entire continent of Australia. Well, 90% of Australia is desert sand. I mean, that's all it is, desert sand. And it's an old continent. At one point, it had huge mountains like the Blue Mountains on the eastern side, but now that everything's broken down into sand, well, that comes from erosion. Even the Rocky Mountains, here where I live, at some point in time, will break down and be as flat as a pancake.
Really?
Another billion or two. Oh, yeah, a billion or 2 billion years. When I climb all the 14ers out here in Colorado, the rocks are always cracking. Every spring, the mountains lose their height, their altitude, 1 or 2 inches or whatever, because everything is breaking down. And at some point, yes, North America will lose the Rocky Mountains because they'll finally break down.
Yeah, well, that'll be quite some time from now, I imagine.
Oh, a couple billion years. Yeah, it takes billions and billions of years. I don't know if anybody knows it or not, but when I was in Antarctica, we had fantastic lectures by the top geologists around the world, and you name it. But at one point, South America was attached to Africa, and Africa also attached. It's called Gondwana land, and Antarctica was attached to Africa. And so what happens, at one point in time, the tectonic plate shifted, and South America broke off, and then it faded over and floated over to be where it is right now. And then Antarctica broke off from South America and floated down to the bottom, and a piece of that of South America actually and Antarctica broke off into the island, if you will, of Australia. And at some point, even India, now India was a part of that massive land break, and India floated, if you will, into the continent of Asia, smashed into the continent of Asia, and literally that gave rise to the Himalayas. And of course, you all know that Mount Everest is at 29,035 feet, I think, and that's all because of that another piece of land smashed into Asia and caused the rise of the Himalaya mountains. Yeah, this planet is always in process. Nothing is ever the same, and the processes are always violent, and they're always moving. I mean, here in Colorado, there's been like 6 or 7 ocean flows going in. That's why you go into the Grand Canyon. There's sedimentation from 1.7 billion years of oceans coming in, dropping their sediment. That's why if you go out to Utah, anybody that's gone to Utah, you see all this extraordinary sedimentation. Well, it's sedimentation over billions of years of these oceans coming in, laying down all that sand and sediment, then retreating, and then the land goes back to doing what it does, and then all of a sudden, because we've got shells, we've got fossils, we've got all the different kinds of sea creatures that used to work all over Utah and Arizona, so you understand from all of that these oceans, advanced and retreated in advance. So yeah, the planet is doing its thing as it goes through time. That's just it's quite amazing. My time in Antarctica was an extraordinary learning experience, geologically, anthropologically, geology-wise. Certainly the creatures that are living and dead, the atmosphere and the different pollution rates, and then they even have, when that last meteor hit and caused the nuclear winter, which killed 97% of life on the planet, plus all of the dinosaurs. That's all recorded down there in Antarctica, and all those in the ice, because the ice down in Antarctica, in some places, is 2 miles deep. The ice. it's 2 miles deep. Even the rivers down there, some of the rivers are over a mile deep, and they're 50, 60 miles wide, and they're just rivers of ice. They're giant rivers of ice, and they're extraordinary. And I got to walk on them. I got to hike on them. I got to walk inside glaciers. I was inside. I have pictures of me inside of these glaciers that are just millions of years old. And there's columns, and there's ice crystals, and there's cathedral, there's pillars. It's extraordinary. I never knew that my world travels would give me so many experiences like this, and that gives me at least a rudimentary knowledge of what I'm talking about now.
How long were you down there in Antarctica?
I was down there for 6 months, and I wrote for the Antarctic Sun, and I attended 2 lectures, hour-and-a-half lectures on a Sunday and a Wednesday by the world's top scientists down there. And so I got to learn so much information. Of course, as a journalist, I took notes. I wrote a lot of articles on that, and I got to I interviewed all these top scientists, and it was an extraordinary experience.
So the overpopulation is playing a role in the extreme weather, right?
Oh, no question about it. Yeah, there's no question anymore about that.
Okay. And what they're calling the cyclone bomb hit you guys this week, and you had a foot of snow?
Yeah, well, almost 2 feet. We had 20 inches right here, so that was just 4 inches short of 2 feet.
Wow.
And the whole of Denver was just paralyzed because, this thing came in, and all of a sudden I'm looking at my deck the next morning, and I've got 20 inches of snow, and it was, I was shoveling and shoveling and shoveling. So, yeah, it was. But there's been storms like this in the past. There's been storms that will drop 3 and 4 feet of snow. I know because I've skied it. So it's not that big of a deal. But again, we are seeing, again, they always call it global warming, and they can call it climate change and all this kind of stuff. What I called it in my book, and I wrote a book, it's called Antarctica, An Extreme Encounter, and it's 20 years old, I think. Yeah, that book's 20 years old, but it's still on Amazon. But what I was brought to understand that it should be called catastrophic climate destabilization.
Ah, that's a good name.
Yeah, that fits it a whole lot better because we're catastrophically destabilizing nature, and she's responding in catastrophic ways. And she will continue to respond in catastrophic ways because we're going to continue to pour that carbon into the atmosphere at 100 million barrels of oil burned every day, along with all the coal. And again, as I've said, China right now wants to be like America. They're adding 27 million new cars to their highways every year. And, of course, as I said, they're going to be burning 100 million barrels of oil themselves by 2030. And they have they're putting a new coal-fired electrical system online, coal-burning electrical plant online every week, 52 of them a year. That's what they're doing. They're growing and burning up the atmosphere, and they're polluting the atmosphere beyond anyone's comprehension.
Would you say that the far right, says there is no climate destabilization? It's hard for me to get a real feel for what they're saying. Now, on the people on the way left, and then you have the AOC with her whole crazy trillions and trillions of dollars and forcing everybody to switch to an electric car immediately and everything. But there's some middle ground here that we got to start. It seems like both sides is kind of wrong the way I see it, right?
Well, both sides have a different mindset.
Right.
And so, okay, here, most Americans don't have a clue what it's like to be somebody from China. They don't have a clue of what it's to be, it's like being in India when 60% of the people don't have a toilet. Most of the people don't have a clue of going down to Mexico City and seeing what it's like to have 20 million people stuffed into an overpopulated, lack of water, horrific consequences of poverty and misery and all that goes with that. Well, I got to go see those things personally. And so if you get the right and, people that don't understand the climate consequences, I call it cognitive dissonance, and that means intellectual denial of reality. And then you've got the far left that's going off, and somebody like AOC doesn't really know what she's talking about. She really doesn't have an understanding. I mean, she is what I would call an enumerate. An enumerate is somebody who's mathematically illiterate, and if she has a foundation of a mind like that, she's out of her depth. Somebody threw her into the deep end of a 12-foot pool, and she doesn't know how to swim. And so she makes all these ridiculous statements, and yet she jumped in because she's now in the House of Representatives.
Have you heard her story? It's very interesting. Have you heard about what are these people? They're called Democrats for Justice. They went out and interviewed people, right? Tell people about that. That's amazing.
Well, from all of the information that's coming in on her, they literally they had she was brought in front of a bunch of I don't know, people, and essentially she was an actress,
right?
Trying to get a part, and she got chosen to become a House of Representatives member and get elected to the House of Representatives. I mean, it's pretty strange stuff.
Yeah, there's this group. They're called Justice Democrats or Democrats for Justice. They had open interviews,
right?
And they what they did is they picked the people with the best personality, the most attractive, and then they feed them this propaganda. And now it's AOC. What's the one Muslim one? Ohan or
there's Rashida Tlaib there in Michigan, and then there's Ilhan Omar there in Minneapolis.
So that's
and somebody stacked those decks. Somebody stacked those decks to make sure that happened. I want everyone to know this. Somebody stacked all of those Muslims, over 300,000 of them in Detroit, Michigan, and so now it's a Muslim enclave, and it has zero chance of identifying with being American, a zero chance of assimilating into America, zero chance of any kind of commonality with America. That will be a tribe unto itself, essentially a self and a welfare tribe. You know, all the Native Americans in this country are on, I call them internment camps, or everybody else calls them reservations. But that's the epitome of socialism, because all of those poor Indians have no ability to function in this white man society, and so they're all on welfare. Houses are built for them, cars are given to them. I mean, Indians on all. I mean, I got a lot of reservations out here where I've been through a lot of the reservations, and these folks are driving around these giant SUV. I mean, it's unbelievable. I can't afford some of these SUVs. I don't drive a car like that, and yet they get all these free cars, and they get their houses and their electricity paid for. Billions of dollars of taxpayer dollars pay for all of these Indians. Well, guess what? They're also paying for all these Muslims in Detroit. They're paying for all these Muslims right there in Minneapolis, over 125,000 of them, and we're paying for it. And that's what we're doing, and that's socialism, folks. And the minute you start paying for somebody to get something for doing nothing, you're going to get more people to get something for doing nothing, and that's why the welfare rolls are out there at 44 million people are on food stamps right now.
44 million.
44 million. It peaked during Barack Obama's time. He had 13 million. It was up to 48 million people subsisting on food stamps. Now it's down to 44 million.
So we got 4 million people off of food stamps.
Yeah, you got 4 million. Yeah, but there's still 44 million every day get all those food stamps, EBT cards, and they are just leeching off the American taxpayer who's working.
That's a depressing thing. That's really too bad. But at least Trump has stoked the economy up, and more people are working now, and there's less unemployment and stuff like that.
Right.
So
that's correct. You know, the biggest thing is welfare. You have to have workfare for welfare. You should absolutely, because some of the big states, I think it's Nebraska or Oklahoma, said, you want welfare, you're going to work.
Good.
And they also, and I think it's in Nebraska, and they don't allow illegal aliens to get on public dole, which should be adopted by every state in the union.
Right.
There's no reason for us to be paying for illegal aliens being in our country. We're forced to pay for their children to be educated, and we're forced to pay for their breakfasts and lunches. I'm sorry, that's not anything. That should not be forced upon us. In fact, the Congress should just be enforcing the laws to stop hiring illegal aliens and then have them self-deport by not having a job in our country because we actually were enforcing the laws. But that's not happening because there's so much skullduggery going on in the U.S. Congress that everybody, you wonder why it's been 30 years since, the 1986 amnesty. Why hasn't the Congress done anything? Well, it's because a whole bunch of people are making a whole bunch of money, and the American people are paying the difference. They're paying big.
When you were talking about the American Indians, it made me think of the fellow with the Covington kids, that American Indian who was
Nathan Phillips, against that Covington kid,
Yeah. And I've heard that there's a Covington kids lawsuit now with the attorney Robert Barnes. Have you heard about that yet?
That's correct. $250 million, or maybe $275 million, going after CNN for falsification of the facts. And when you really dig into the video, this kid was just sitting there along with the other kids, and they weren't doing anything other than waiting for the bus to go on their whatever trip.
Mm-hmm.
And then and amazingly, I think his name was Nathan Phillips, the Indian, was supposedly a U.S. Marine. Come to find out, he was a cook in the United States Marine Corps, and he was AWOL, and he was a dishonorably discharged. I think he had three AWOLs, absent without leave.
I did not know that.
And the Indian, this guy came up. He came up and provoked that kid.
Sure.
He provoked him, the Covington kid, and the Covington kid sat there and smiled, and that's what he did, nonviolent.
Mm-hmm.
The rest of the guys behind him, he just made sure there was no confrontation, and yet CNN falsely reported that all these kids and this one kid were out there haranguing and harassing this Indian who was a former Marine. So, it goes to show you don't get all of the facts, certainly from somebody like CNN, but MSNBC. You look at the ABC when that Jesse Follett stood right there in front of Robin. I watched the interview myself. He was a brilliant actor and lying in every sentence he spoke. In front of Robin Roberts, he lied his tail feathers off. Bald-faced lie, every sentence he spoke. It was unbelievable. And now he's caught, and now he's got, I think, 16 federal charges against him, all felony charges.
You know what's really interesting? He pleaded not guilty.
Yeah, personally, he ought to just go, he's going to be sitting in a jail cell. That's what he's going to do. I mean, he wrote himself a death threat in the U.S. mail, which made it a federal felony.
Wow.
So, he is not. Even the black police chief there in that city where
Chicago?
This all happened said, he said, this young man has lied to us. We've got the facts. I mean, once that black police chief goes up in front of the judge, this kid's going to be sitting in a jail cell. He's in more trouble than he even understands. But what I am amazed at the profound ability to lie to Robin Roberts and to the American people. It was unbelievable. He should get an Oscar because he was such a good liar.
It seems so common today among CNN and MSNBC and these other mainstream media. There's just blatant lies all the time. It's terrible.
Oh yeah, they'll come out of it's just like you sit here and you see what our Congress critters are doing to this country by importing this massive incompatible cultures and religions into our midst. They're provoking civil conflict. And again, it was said by a guy named Van Cleold, immigration is war with the violence delayed.
Wow.
Immigration is war with the violence delayed. So in other words, the thing that went on over in New Zealand, even one of the Aussies, he just said, "Hey, you're forcing all of these incompatible religions onto our society, and what do you expect is going to happen at some point? And then there's going to be retaliation, and then there's going to be retaliation the other way, and at the boiling point." And again, I think I've said it: the silent assertion by Mark Twain back in 1861. He said, "You keep messing around. It's called the silent lie. That's what silent assertion is. You pretend something's not going on, and you keep importing all of this immigration into a country that's incompatible, has no business. I mean, there's no way that you can take violent religions and bring them into a stand-up, decent society with the kinds of morals and ethics and mandates that the U.S. Constitution provides for, and think that that's all going to work out. It's not going to work out. Whether it was New Zealand or Christchurch, or whether it was the 9/11, or whether it was the 50 kids that got killed in a gay bar down in Orlando, and then Fort Lauderdale, and then Ohio State, and San Bernardino. I mean, what did you expect? I mean, who was the bright idea to bring such an incompatible religion into this country? A violent religion. I mean, that's the fact. You can't step around it, and yet they're doing it to us.
Or it's being done on purpose, right?
It's being done on purpose. And what amazes me is why those who are driving this, I still can't believe that New Zealand allowed, all of these Islamics into their country when they knew it would happen into UK. They knew UK was getting busted right down to its knuckles, and all of Europe. And you sit there and you go, why did New Zealand? Because New Zealand doesn't let anybody in there. I mean, you got to have a lot of money to get in there, but somehow somebody allowed enough of those people, and now they're seeding New Zealand with Islamists, and they're going to have more conflict there in New Zealand, just like they have over in the UK.
And most people don't realize how close we here in the U.S. are to civil war.
Oh yeah, I mean, when tempers get hot this summer, when you got the different races in Chicago, you're going to have shoot. Remember, was it last year in Chicago? There was something like 60 gunfights over this 4th of July weekend.
60 or 70.
70, yeah. It was unbelievable. How do people go do that? I don't want to have a bullet going through my body. I'm really allergic to bullets. I was in the United States Army. I was not too excited about that. But yet you've got all of this gun violence. Chicago. I mean, every night in Denver here, we got a shooting and a killing. I mean, it's down there in Aurora, which is now a multicultural nightmare. Aurora is just outside of Denver, and they've got they got mosques all over the place there. They got all the Hispanics. They got the mosques. They got black conflict. I mean, yeah, Denver's a boiling. It's got its boiling point also.
Solon and I were talking in the first hour about World War II and the island hopping campaign and the battles of Iwo Jima and Okinawa and Saipan and all that. And I was just wondering if we'll ever be doing anything like that again. It just seems so strange. Solon, did you have anything you wanted to add, or?
No, not currently.
Okay. But I just thought I'd give you the opportunity there. But, World War II was a very different time with a very different kind of mindset. It's hard for me to imagine us doing warfare on that scale again. What do you see? Just a civil war in the United States, and then the kind of the United States just kind of degenerating. What do you see? Do you have a vision of what will take place in our country over the next decade?
I do kind of see what's coming at the United States and at Canada. You have all these different tribes, and again, immigration is war with violence delayed. And you're going to see, that one kid that shot up a mosque and killed 6 Muslims up there in Quebec, I think it was, or maybe it was Montreal. I can't remember. That was a year or two ago. And now you've got the New Zealand thing, but you've got, after reading The Strange Death of Europe, they've got violence every day. As a matter of fact, in Nigeria, in just the last 4 days, the Muslims in Nigeria killed 125 Christians And that's pretty much a normal deal. I mean, the Muslims don't like Christians, and they don't like Jewish people, and they kill them, especially when they're in a lawless country or continent like Africa. I mean, you have to understand Africa is one big, giant, tribal, just a simmering cauldron of tribal conflict. And the Muslims go out there, and they, nobody reported that. I've got it right here on my transom here, but so then all of a sudden some guy kills off 40 Muslims and so forth, and it's an outrage, and it's this, that, and the next thing. Well, unfortunately, in Islam, I said it, 20,000 women every year get killed by their husbands or brothers or uncles through honor killings. You don't hear a thing about that from MSNBC. You don't hear about it from CNN. Jake Tapper won't get down from his high horse and say anything, and Jonathan Karl the same. None of these people will talk about that. That's all hidden stuff. Well, it's coming to America. Again, we're already averaging 23 to 27 honor killings here in the United States every year. We got over 500,000 cases of female genital mutilation, which is assault and battery. And do you hear anything from the mainstream press? And, of course, the mainstream press squashes everything that has to do with anything. In fact, up there in Minneapolis, Minnesota, the Minneapolis Star-Tribune will not report all of the rapes that are going on by all the Somalis, either of their own women or the attempted rapes of all the white girls up there, because the Somalis, they want to get a white girl, and you won't hear that. That's all suppressed by the Minneapolis Star-Tribune and also the Pioneer Express. And why do I know? Because I have a friend living up there, and he sends me all this information all the time. And so what again, as Mark Twain said back in 1861, the silent lie, you keep squashing the facts down, but you keep building up the reason for the consequences, and you're going to end up with, well, guess what? The Civil War. And so if we keep doing the same thing here, and we keep importing all of these people who are incompatible with our country, our civilization, our ethics, our morals, our U.S. Constitution, at some point there will be a tipping point, and we're going to have major civil conflict in this country. That's virtually inevitable at this point in time.
This thing in Christchurch, the New Zealand assassination, I wonder sometimes if that was a deep state operation to discredit whites and to make people more open to immigrants. There's so many different slants on this, and I just use my common sense. Mm-hmm. Somebody is forcing all of this immigration of incompatible cultures, and Islam is incompatible with any other culture. It is totally incompatible. It is antagonistic. It comes to conquer. It's called hijra. Look it up, hijra. Seeding. Muhammad states it right there in the Quran. And I wouldn't know all this stuff unless I read the Quran, and that's what I did, just so I know what the kind of enemy this is. It is a violent, it is a vicious, it's an underhanded, it even tells its followers to lie just to make sure that it gets in. So you might have a soft-spoken imam who sounds like he's okay. Hey, he's just patting the gosh darn your coffin is what he's doing. Because when there's enough Muslims to take over and create Sharia law, then that's what's going to happen, and that's already happened. 150 Sharia courts now in the United Kingdom. And again, no-go zones are all over London. You don't dare walk into these places. And if you're a woman that you try to walk in and you think, well, I'm a British citizen, I can walk into the streets of the London that's now Muslim, or any of the outlying cities that are Muslim, you don't have a hijab on and you don't have a full dress down, and you're virtually covered up except for your little face. At some point, the basic foundationalists, they'll make sure you have a burqa. So the only thing you can have is slit for your eyes. And I've been to Philadelphia. You walk the streets of Market Street, where where Ben Franklin used to live. You'll see a bunch of people in these little slit-eyed burqas. Wow!
I mean, the Muslims are now in Philadelphia, and there are thousands of them. And so again, there's no respect for freedom of women, the choice of women. Women are just as terrified over here as they are over in their own countries, and the culture is just as thick here now in America as it is over there. And again, we get 15, 20, 30 million Muslims in this country, I guarantee you all hell's going to break loose at some point, because the American people are just going to, unfortunately, there's going to be a reckoning. I can see it coming as surely as the dawn.
And how are these Sharia law courts being set up in the UK? Have you researched that at all?
Oh, they just here's what happens. Okay, Sharia law. I mean, it manifests. You kill gays. You have the right to have 4 wives for yourself. You can kill your first wife if you want a second wife and you can't afford the first wife, but you want another wife, so you can kill her. You can make up. You can divorce your wife by saying 3 times "I divorce you." If a woman gets raped, it's her fault in Sharia law. Children have no rights. Animals have no rights in Sharia law. Gays, again, heads chopped off. Female genital mutilation of all female children. You absolutely cannot go outside of a house without a male escort if you're a woman. You can't drive a car. You can't ride a bicycle. You have to wear a burqa. I mean, it's unbelievable what Sharia law does. And what happens is it's de facto Sharia law. All these Sharia law courts, 150 of them, give or take, there in England right now, are run by imams, I-M-A-M. That's like a preacher. And they absolutely they make women terrified for their lives, because women are totally terrified for their lives every day of their lives. They can be Sharia killed. And so these Sharia courts adjudicate on Muslims if they did something that is not accepted there in Islam. And so that's now, like I said, and there's 50 city councils, I think, that are completely dominated. And now in Detroit, Michigan, you have, I think, Hamtramck and Dearborn are completely dominated by Muslims, because all the whites have run out.
So some of our states have banned Sharia law, though, haven't they?
Yeah, they sure have. Quite a few of them have. And they had to just say, they couldn't pinpoint Islam because I think one state had it overturned. But then they just said, okay, no allowance for any other law in our state other than the U.S. Constitution and our state law. And so, yeah, and I think it's been like a dozen have done that already. And more better do that, because at some point you get enough Muslims into, into big federal positions and or state positions, they could literally start pushing on, and they are going to push for Sharia law.
Now, in some cultures, in some Muslim cultures, do they still do amputation and crucifixion and public stoning?
Yes, they do.
Amazing.
You can go to YouTube, and it'll give you the dates. If some lady gets caught for something they don't like, they'll stone her to death. And it's amazing what they do. They don't take big rocks to just, bash her head in. They bury her with her head. You can look it up on YouTube. Just look, honor killings and honor stonings. They get small rocks so that she suffers. She keeps getting hit and hit and hit, and finally she has brain contusions because rocks the size of say a robin's egg, or even a rock the size of a hen's egg, a small hen's egg. Yeah, these males, these men in the Sharia law in the Islamic religion are really cruel. Sadistic bastards. I mean, I don't know what else you can say, because again, 20,000 women get killed every year. You look it up if you doubt that. I did a report on it. I did the research on it. The United Nations did a exhaustive study. They came up with 20,000 honor killings minimum. That was the baseline. They think it's even more, because there's 1.5 billion Muslims in this world. And there's a lot of foundation. And once you're in a system like that, and that whole system is in power, that's the power paradigm, it can do anything it wants. And what they can do is murder those women legally. They can legally, and they can make up any. I think I told you, it was in Ohio 3 years ago when I was at my farm in Rocky Point, Ohio. A father killed his daughter, shot her 2 times in the head while she slept, because he had disobeyed her, or wore, I think she was wearing, Levi jeans.
Oh boy!
That was the Rocky. Yeah, just look it up. Rocky, I think it's Rocky Point, Rocky. Just look it up. Honor killing, Rocky Point, Ohio, and it'll tell you the whole story. He shot her in the head twice to make sure she was dead. You know, and out here in Colorado, we've got honor killings here. One guy over in Arizona, and his mother and a daughter, Nor, she was too westernized, and the guy ran down and killed the mother and the daughter. Another in South Carolina, a father shot 2 of his kids. I've got the stuff. I could actually send it to you. It's all been it's all been written up. One guy in New Jersey beheaded 2 guys because they were caustic Christians, I think, and he was a Muslim, and he beheaded them. He beheaded them, and he beheaded them, and then he tossed them into a cemetery. This was about 4 or 5 years ago.
And they caught him. He went to jail.
Yeah, they caught him. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they caught him. He's sitting in jail. Oh, there's another guy. He was in New York City, and his wife wanted to divorce. He had 2 kids, and he was beating the crap out of his wife. And he was a New York a videographer. He was showing the softer side of Islam, and he was trying to soft pedal Islam in New York City.
Really? Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and she tried to divorce him, and they said, you better get a restraining order, and she did. He beheaded her. He beheaded her. I've got the story. I mean, I've got the certification of it and everything. It was in the New York Times. So,
jeez.
Yeah, that's what's coming to our country. It's not over there, folks. It's here right now. It's right here in our country, and it's going on. And the mainstream press will not report it. The same as I read the book, The Strange Death of Europe. The media over there will not report what's really going on in Europe.
So tell us about marriage under Islamic law. Like what age do they think it's okay to get married?
About 9. You have to understand that Muhammad was a brutal, tribal, illiterate, pedophile, rapist. I mean, the guy was just a brutal warlord. He was illiterate, and he was after power, and that's all. He got beat down a couple times, but he finally caught on, and he literally decapitated anyone who ever went against him. And as he got more and more followers, obviously the followers were scared to death, kind of like the SS Nazi, if you will. At some point, Hitler got more powerful, and then you couldn't possibly go against Hitler. Well, at some point, Muhammad did the same thing, and he would decapitate anybody that was his enemy, and behead people, and that's how they operate, and that's what's going on to this day.
What about?
It's unbelievably brutal.
What about drinking alcohol? Do they drink alcohol?
Yeah, it's against. It's so amazing. All this, the piousness of Islam, when in fact they're some of the sickest men on the planet. I mean. They marry these 9, 10, 11, 12-year-old girls. I mean, they marry. You can go online and look at the marriage of little girls to Muslims. I've seen them. They'll marry a 9, 10, 11, 12-year-old to a 30 or 40-year-old man. And you go, what? But that's what they do. That is documented, and that's what they do.
Well, it'll be interesting the next, 5 or 10 years trying to imagine what's going to happen here in the United States. It's stunning. I could see even a partial breakdown of the U.S. within the next year or two. I wouldn't be surprised if Trump gets reelected in 2020 that maybe California breaks off from the U.S. or something like that.
Well, there's several different kinds of scenarios that we're facing. The biggest thing is there's going to be another Islamic jihadist event here in our country. Somebody's going to go in and some guy's going to fly a drone into an NFL football game. That could easily be done. The smarter they're getting, the more clever they're getting. They're going to try to commit mass mayhem here, and then you're going to have individual jihadist situations where they're shooting up a Christmas party or going into a nightclub and killing all those gay people, and or stabbing people walking across the bridge. I mean, it just depends, because in every Muslim number, you get a group of Muslims, one or two of them are going to be they're going to follow the Quran to the nth degree, and they're going to go out and commit jihad, and so somebody in America is going to get killed with the next jihad attack, just like what happened over in Paris, or in Nice, France, over in Germany, over in Sweden. I mean, my brother Rex lives over there, and he said a woman cannot walk down the streets of Oslo anymore in Norway. Can't walk down the streets of Oslo.
Period.
Oh yeah, period. She can't. She'd have to have at least two big guys, and then if they saw a gang of a bunch of 5 or 6 Muslims, they better damn well get the heck out of there. But what's happening, as almost 40% of Oslo is now being taken over by Muslims, the whites are just fleeing Oslo. At some point, it's just going to be completely taken over, become a ghost town, kind of like Detroit. And yet, the top rung of Norway. Oh, we got to keep bringing in. My brother Rex said, yeah, they're going to bring in another 100,000 this summer. These are Africans from Africa, Muslim Africans from Africa. That again, as I said to you all, and you can look it up on brainstates.com. Average IQ of an African is around 68. 68 IQ.
Do you see the Muslims as a greater threat to the U.S. than China?
Oh, easily. Yeah,
Okay.
China can only beat us down economically, but the Muslims in America can create, city conflict, religious conflict, jihadist conflict. They can, if they get really smart, they could take drones and drive them right into our electrical grid. And don't mind telling you that I'm sure that's got on their plate and on their planning sessions, because the real Islamists, they want to do whatever they can to break the United States, and it's very possible. You run a couple of RPG rounds in, or a giant plastic drone into a electrical power station in New York City, you could black out New York in a heartbeat. And if you got that going on, you got big problems.
Do you think they want the destruction of the U.S., or do they want the U.S. for themselves?
Oh, they want to destroy the United States first off, and yeah, conquer. Their whole the Quran has one prime directive: convert or kill all non-believers. That's right out of the Quran, and they do not finish until they have completed a triumph of conquest through terror. And so in the end, the one thing they've got Europe kowtowed, if you will, but I don't think they're going to kowtow the United States at some point. Every redneck, and you might even call me a redneck. I mean, I'm just a farm boy from Michigan, so I'm probably a redneck starting off. I guarantee you, we're going to stand up, and it's going to be a bloody hell to pay.
Do you think that there's a moderate branch of Islam that isn't so extreme?
Well, it's been said, and I don't know what historical figure said, that a radical Islamist will cut the head off of his opponent. Well, the moderate Islamist will hold the victim's feet.
Oh.
And so what that means is that, much like what happened with Nazi Germany, you get enough Muslims together, they're all going to be on the same page. And once they're all on the same page, that's going to be an extraordinary force of thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, and they're all true believers. And unfortunately, that religion goes to the negative first. It doesn't want to have world peace. It wants world dominance. And so you're going to have that. You're going to have to contend with that. This was about 5 years ago. I was in a parking lot at Winter Park going skiing. No, I just finished that day, and this lady who was Russian was an immigrant with a kid with her, and my friend was with me, and we started talking about Islam and Muslims and all this stuff and what was happening to Europe at the time. And she said, "Well, I come from Russia, and I immigrated here." And she said this: the only way to stop Islam is kill every last one of them and burn every last one of their Qurans, because it's the most vicious, violent religion on the planet. And I'm virtually giving you the exact quote of what she said. And I took a big gulp, and I went, "Whoa!" And she was over from Russia, and Russia's got all of his Muslims, but it keeps them at bay by, they don't get to move sideways over there in Russia. Same thing in China. China will not tolerate the Muslims. It puts them in re-education camps, or otherwise it'll execute them.
Wow. So I don't.
Oh yeah, China doesn't mess around.
I don't see Russia as a big threat.
No, I don't either. The biggest thing is China can't afford to make us a threat because why? They need us economically to keep. They're the economic engine of the world. Really, they're certainly outdoing us right now, and they will be the biggest economic powerhouse. And they've got to have products to sell to all the rest of the countries. So it's in their favor to just maintain and do what they do, and that's what they're doing.
Well, Frost, I want to give you a chance to plug your book a little bit before we run out of time completely.
Yeah. For those of you, from age 21 to 81, my latest book just came out, and it's got 4 big reviews on Amazon already. One guy wanted to, instead you get 5-star rating, he said this should be rated 7 stars, so that's probably the best.
Wow.
But Old Men Bicycling Across America, A Journey Beyond Old Age. It's a fun book. I'm holding it right here. You'll see my picture on the front cover, along with the other 4 old guys, bald and gray beards and the whole thing. But it's a fun book, and it's a great read for anyone who wants to be entertained, armchair, adventurer. It's got a lot of great spiritual philosophy. And as serious as I am on this program and giving you all these serious realities that we're facing, this book is the other way. It's about living life, having a grand time, celebrating your good health, your high spirits, traveling and enjoying. And the last 3 chapters shows you how to do it yourself, because I'd love to have everybody go out there and live their own dreams and express themselves and have a blast, whatever way they want to, whether it's an e-bike or a bicycle or motorcycle or anything else, to go on the road and to take in the world and to talk to people and see the different events. You'll have a blast reading this book. I guarantee it.
Do you start bicycling again here in the next couple of weeks?
I'm taking off on a circumnavigation of the USA, this time on a motorcycle, starting in Denver down to El Paso, to Corpus Christi, to Key West, Florida, to Bar Harbor, Maine, to Bellingham, Washington, down to San Diego, then back to El Paso. And then I'll start on a bicycle on July the 1st, and I'm riding from Mexico to Canada on the Continental Divide. So I'm going to get a big motorcycle ride in. And just like I did in 2017, I did that motorcycle adventure from Denver all the way to the Arctic Circle in Alaska and came back. And then I went on the cross-country trip from Astoria, Oregon to Bar Harbor, Maine, which this book is all about. So yeah, I'm a moving man. Like I said, I'm 72 years old, and I'm running out of runway. And each day I wake up, my window of opportunity is narrowing. So I'm literally having a great. And then when I get back, I'm going to backpack the Colorado Trail for 2 weeks. I'll finish up that 489-mile trek by 2020, and then in the autumn I'll ride a bicycle 16th of September to the 22nd from Golden all the way to Aspen and the Maroon Bells. So I've got a full summer, and it's going to be a fantastic adventure because I want to make the best of however many years I have left.
Thanks, Frosty. It's been another great show. I think we're out of time. Have a good evening, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Mark.
Bye-bye.